There comes a moment on every spiritual path when the illusion cracks. You look at your life and realize, this isn't my story. The script you've been following, family expectations, cultural labels, even spiritual frameworks, was never yours to begin with. That moment is disillusionment, seeing through the illusion, even if it's painful. It's not despair, it's reality showing itself. And reality, when you can stay with it, is the first step towards freedom. It can feel like a shattering. The life you thought was yours dissolves, and you're left staring at the uncomfortable truth. You've been living inside a structure designed to keep you fragmented. This is the threshold of awakening. Painful, disorienting, and yet absolutely necessary. So take a moment. Have you felt that shattering before? Where the life you built suddenly didn't fit? Let yourself notice what comes to mind. Disillusionment is not failure. It's an initiation. If you stop here, the wound becomes your identity. But if you stay present, if you're willing to sit in the discomfort without collapsing back into the old story, disillusionment becomes the doorway to freedom. When I speak about disillusionment, I don't just mean the collapse of a story. I also mean what Patanjali described thousands of years ago in the Yoga Sutras. He gave us a map of what clouds are vision. He calls them the kleshas, the root causes of suffering, and there are 5. The first one is avidya, misknowing, ignorance, illusion. It's not ignorance in a harsh sense, but in the sense of not seeing clearly. Avidya is the veil that keeps us from recognizing the truth. This is the foundation of disillusionment, when the veil begins to tear. Then comes asmita, or false identification. This is the small self, the fragmented self, the ego, the part of you that says, I am this role, I am this wound, I am this story. Trauma feeds this by locking you into separation. It convinces you that the wound is who you are. And the other kleshas, attachment, aversion, fear of death and loss, show how we cling, avoid, and resist. And together, they keep us circling the same patterns. Modern psychology gives us language for what the kleshas feel like. Trauma distorts your perception, it fragments you, it keeps you in loops. And that's why the trauma triangle, victim, persecutor, and rescuer, is such a powerful mirror. It shows you how trauma keeps you moving inside the illusion, never breaking free. But here is the truth. You don't treat disillusionment just like you don't treat avidya or misperception. You meet it. You see it. That's the turning point. This is where my wound work wisdom framework comes in. The what is the wound? It's the noun, the thing, the structure, the pattern. The how is the work. It's the verb, the action you take to move through the distortion. And the why is the wisdom, the evolving purpose that grows as you keep showing up with presence. If you stay caught in the what, you'll loop forever. If you move from the wound with anger or blame, you'll still stay in the triangle. But if you can pause, breathe, ground, and ask, from where am I moving this energy? From the wound, or from presence, or from love? That's when you return to yourself. This is why Patanjali spoke of viveka, discernment, clear seeing. It's the courage to meet illusion without running, to see the wound without becoming the wound. That's the real work of disillusionment. But here's the trap. right at the doorway. It's always at the doorway. It's tempting to grab another story to replace the old one. You feel the ground crumbling underneath your feet. So you reach for something pre-written, something that seems to give you meaning, safety, or false sense of clarity. And so begins the seduction of ready-made stories. When you first wake up to the fact that you've been living someone else's story, it's tempting to grab a hold of another one that feels safer, cleaner, already written. Maybe you meet someone who knows astrology or tarot or psychology. Instead of being given tools to uncover your own truth, you're handed another script. You're this sign, so you must be like this. This is your wound, so this is who you are. At first, that can feel clarifying when you're lost or confused. But those stories aren't yours. They belong to someone else. Think about the last time you grabbed onto a story that seemed to explain you. Did it actually bring you closer to yourself? Or did it give you a role to play? It gives you language. It gives you momentum. But momentum isn't the same as movement. You can be circling inside the same triangle of trauma, victim, rescuer, persecutor, while believing you found freedom. This is known as the trauma triangle, a cycle where you unconsciously slip into roles of victim, rescuer, and persecutor. Each role keeps us reactive instead of free, and I'll go deeper into this in another future episode, but for now, notice how these roles shape the stories we cling to. The truth is, many of those guides are also caught inside the same surface cycle. They may offer answers when what you really need is a mirror and a practice. A true tool is not an answer. It's an opening. It doesn't tell you who you are. It shows you how to sit with yourself long enough to find out. Astrology, for example, isn't a fixed story. Your chart isn't a prison cell. It's a blueprint of potentials, patterns, and energies. The same is true with chakras or with therapy frameworks. They describe energies at play, but only you know how those energies move in you. Only you can discern whether a pattern is yours to live, yours to release, or yours to transform. And that's why so many people say, this helped me up until a certain point, because at a certain stage, the very tool that gave you momentum also kept you trapped. It gave you a story, but it didn't bring you into presence. So maybe ask yourself, have you ever mistaken momentum for movement? Busy, searching, learning, but still circling the same pain. Presence is what lets you step outside the wound long enough to see the wound. By presence, I mean that grounded awareness of what's here right now in your breath, in your body, the unfiltered truth of this moment. Presence is what sets you from being caught inside the story long enough to see it clearly. Presence is what breaks the triangle. When you are present, you no longer have to cling to the identity, role, or label. You begin to respond from a deeper seat, not from the wound, but from the self who sees clearly. Astrology, personality frameworks, even cultural roles can serve as mirrors. They reflect pieces of you, shadow and light alike. They can offer insight and language, but they are not your identity. They are tools. And tools are only useful if you know how to hold them. Your story isn't written in a horoscope or in a statistic or a diagnosis. Your story is written in how you choose to live, moment by moment, day by day. So when you pick up a tool, notice, am I using this to uncover myself or to hide behind it? Does this practice return me to presence or pull me deeper into the drama? And here is the deeper truth. Even the best tools can only take you so far. They can open a door, but they can't walk you through it. They can point you toward freedom, but they can't give you presence. Only you can do that. And this is where many of us get stuck. We mistake the momentum of adopting a new identity for the movement of awakening. But momentum inside the drama triangle, victim, rescuer, persecutor, is still the same cycle. It feels like you're moving, but you're still circling. Presence is what breaks the cycle. Presence is what lets you step outside the wound long enough to actually see the wound. When you're present, you don't have to cling to labels or roles. You begin to respond from a deeper seat, not the wound itself, but the aware self. That's when you start writing your own story. Think of a lotus flower. It doesn't grow in clear water. It roots in the mud. It rises through murk and resistance, and still it blooms. Your journey is no different. You may have grown up in conditions that never mirrored your essence, and you may have inherited stories, names, and roles long before you had a say. Yet, like the lotus, you can rise. Picture yourself as the lotus right now, rooted in mud, rising through the water. What have you grown through that no one else sees? What light are you remembering? You are not the mud. You are not the water. You are the one who rises. You don't bloom because the path was clean. You bloom because you kept going, because something inside you remembered light. When you find yourself clinging to a story that explains your life, whether it's your star sign, your family history, your trauma, or your culture, stop, breathe, and ask, is this really me? Does this story reflect who I am at my core, or just who I was told to be? Am I using the story to understand myself, or to stay safe from growth? Or deeper still, am I using it to avoid my growth altogether? Be honest with yourself. The ego loves to label comfort as truth, but comfort isn't always alignment, and safety isn't always freedom. Your real story begins when you stop hiding behind the inherited meaning and start creating your own, not from the mud, but from the bloom. Blooming is not a performance. It's not an image of perfection or final arrival. It's the moment you choose to honor what's real, even when it's tender, even when it's raw. A bloom doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't shrink back just because the world forgot how to look at beauty without needing to label it. And like the lotus, the deeper your roots go, the more stable you rise. But here's the part most people skip. Blooming is a practice, not a one-time revelation, but a rhythm of returning again and again. And that's where your inner studio comes in. Think of your life not as a test, but as a studio, a space to explore, reflect, and create, a place where presence meets process. In this studio, you're not trying to become someone else's idea of healed, spiritual, or aligned. You're learning to listen to the quiet truth beneath the noise. Every emotion becomes information. Every story becomes material. And every breath becomes a brushstroke. So now, what's the brushstroke you're painting with this breath? What story are you creating in this very moment? The studio is where you practice, where you strip back the borrowed stories, reroute old habits, and create new patterns rooted in presence, not for perfection, but for truth, because alignment isn't a final pose, it's a relationship. And the studio is where that relationship deepens, one moment at a time. Realizing you've been living someone else's story is one of the clearest forms of disillusionment. It's the moment the illusion cracks and you see that the script you've been following was never written for your freedom. This place can feel like an ending, but it's actually a beginning. With ego, disillusionment becomes despair. With presence, it becomes the threshold of awakening. We are all storytellers, but the most important story you'll ever tell is your own. Don't settle for someone else's version of your life. Let disillusionment wake you up, not weigh you down. Write your own story in your own voice, with your own truth. Like the lotus, let each layer you shed bring you closer to your center, your balance, your light. Take one breath for the story you're leaving behind, and one breath for the story you're choosing to write. Every return to presence is another petal on your bloom. So as you step away from this conversation, pause for a moment. Place a hand on your body, your heart, your belly, and remind yourself, this life belongs to me. This moment is mine to meet. Carry that with you into your own studio, your daily life. Keep noticing the borrowed stories, keep returning to presence, and keep practicing the bloom, because your story isn't out there waiting to be found. It's right here, waiting to be written. And this is where your story begins. Thank you for being with me here today. I hope you have a beautiful day.